Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bull Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Wader. Oh, and we've had a lot of trouble trying to get this episode put together, more than you could ever know. Um, yes, I am recording from my phone on Zoom. I don't love it. It was not my first choice. But this is the point that we're at.
Shout
With
out iPad for randomly shutting off right whenever we started recording. Shout out iPad.
Yeah, we were in the heat of it too. But we're back talking college football. Um, we're gonna get into it. Show a lot of talk about a lot of what's happened in college football. Um, and then look ahead to next week, obviously, as we always do. But let's start on Thursday night. Arizona State. Just to quickly touch on them. Beats Texas State in a 3-point game. And to me, surprising 3-0 start. Not the greatest toughest schedule through the first 3 weeks, but still, I'm impressed at how well this Arizona State team has played thus far.
Yeah, same here. And I'm sorry, Groot freaked me out there for a second. I thought you were being stalked
Oh,
over your shoulder behind you. It kind of had me
yeah,
freaked out. I was like, what's going on behind you? But I see Groot's just hanging out. Groot's a fan of the show.
yep.
That's good to know. But no, for Arizona State, I'm just happy they got off to a 3-0 start. They haven't played the toughest schedule in the world. I mean, they blew out Wyoming. They had wire to wire win over Mississippi State. Now they went to Texas State, a team many people picked as their group of 5 representative, and went out and won there. So, and I'm pretty sure this is their first 3-0 start since before COVID. So, I'm happy for them. I know it may not be the toughest schedule in the world, but I'm happy for
Yeah.
Arizona State. Make sure and add that part in there.
We'll talk about Arizona in just a second. Um, then we spin it over to Friday where we had UNLV facing off against the Kansas Jayhawks. And look, UNLV gets the job done. And a lot of people like myself had picked this Kansas team to be a force in college football. I picked them to win the Big 12. But we just haven't seen that level of execution from Kansas. And for UNLV, off to a 3-0 start with some pretty impressive wins under their belt. Looks like they might be auditioning for one of those two spots in the Pac-12 to get them back to being a full conference.
I mean, I'm amazed they're already not a member, to say the least. But no, with Kansas, look, they have a solid run game, solid unit overall. Jalen Daniels just can't stop turning the football over. You look at what he did last week for them against Illinois. What cost them in that game? Turnovers, multiple interceptions. One turned out to be a pick six. This game, he struggled throwing the football again. So that's what's hurting Kansas. UNLV, listen, they're a solid football team. They don't really pass the ball up. They're more of a run heavy team, but they were able to go in, get a win over Kansas, mainly in part because of some of those turnovers that led to that touchdown at the end of the first half. But UNLV, they got stuff on their schedule. I know they're not ranked in the top 25, but they have a win, 2 wins on the road at Power 5 teams. At Houston, which I know isn't the best, and obviously at Kansas, which I know might not be the best. But still, that's stuff that not many teams have. Multiple wins against Power 4 opponents on the road. So I think that's really impressive for them to go out and do that. They still host Syracuse in a couple. I think they're off this week, and then they might play them a week after that. But they host Syracuse. They still play at Oregon State. So there's still more Power 5 wins that they could get on their resume. And then obviously still Boise State in conference play. But this is a team, you're absolutely right, that we need to keep an eye on for being that 12 seed. And they've shown they can go on the road into Power 4 opponents and win games outright.
Absolutely, and that's scary for that first round matchup. Seeing them as that 12 seed coming into your own field, and maybe they still put up a big fight. But then we pan it over to our other Friday game, and actually, just quickly, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I did want to note that about Kansas and about Jalen Daniels. We've been saying for the last couple of years. I feel like at least I've been. If Jalen Daniels can get healthy, he could be a Heisman contender. This Kansas team could be a playoff contender. And now we're seeing a healthy Jalen Daniels, and he just looks lost out there on the field. So hopefully maybe he can get it together and still put together a convincing campaign to close out this season. There's plenty of time
It's
left.
very chaotic. This Big 12 is very chaotic. So they still got a chance. They just got to get it figured out quickly.
Absolutely. But then to pan to this other game on Friday night, we've got Arizona versus Kansas State. And look, Kansas State flat out went out and proved a point in this game. 31-7 final score. And look, they had a lot of questions after their last week against Tulane. They went on the road in New Orleans to face off against the Waves. And look, it was a comeback victory and an impressive victory against a Tulane team that I think is a very skilled and talented unit. But still, this is a team that wants to compete for a national championship, and to do that, you've got to win these games. They came out and proved a point against a top 25 opponent to get the job done at home in the Little Apple and show that this team's better than they looked last week.
Yeah, I mean, this was just flat out dominance by Kansas State, mainly in the second half. First half, it was a bit close, 14-7. But Kansas State did what they do well. They ran the football all over this Arizona team, but their defense got a lot of good stops against this Arizona offense that we talked about being very elite. And, held Arizona 1 for 4 on fourth down conversion. So that was really good for them. But the thing that we talked about, we both said it. Kansas State has a very good running game, very good O line, good defense. What could Avery Johnson do passing the football? And I'm not saying he was perfect on Friday night, but he went out there and did his job and made some big throws, made some big passes when they needed them. And if he can continue to throw the ball effectively while also being able to run for over 200 yards, I think this Kansas State team is going to be pretty fine in this Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we spin it to some of the games on Saturday night. And let's first start talking about the Arkansas Razorbacks. Look, they survive a scary game against UAB in Fayetteville. It is a 37-27 victory, but the Razorbacks, they did not start out so hot, and it nearly cost them in this game.
I mean, I know I keep on here. I heard all the people saying fire Sam Pittman after this game. I was like, what are you talking about? He got fired in Stillwater last week, right? I left him in
Yeah.
Stillwater. So, but no, this game, listen, they just got off to a really rough start. The defense let UAB go right down the field on them multiple times. Taylon Green, I love the kid. I always support him. He is struggling throwing the football. That in the middle of the field. I mean, he is struggling heavily making some throws here. And I know, like we both talked about, we want to see it develop, but in order to have some hope, we got to see some development and him get better at it as we go along. And through 3 weeks, I haven't seen much improvement there. So, but nonetheless, they're able to come back, win the game. Yippee, you beat UAB, a team you're favored to beat by 3 touchdowns. You beat them by 10 points. And if not for our kicker making some clutch field goals, this might have honestly had a chance for UAB to go down and tie it at the end of regulation. So good that the Razorbacks are 2-1. But I mean, the schedule does not get any easier entering SEC play now. So they cannot afford to have performances like this, and it'll probably end up the same as it always does with Sam Pittman. Play really close against really good SEC teams just to barely lose, and people be like, oh, look how close this team is to being good. It won't change until Sam is gone. Sam, prove me wrong, buddy. But until you are gone, I'm not going to believe otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we swing it over. Notre Dame heads into Purdue, and they get the job done 66-7. You know what? I'll say it. Flat out impressive performance for Notre Dame here. Look, this is a team that they were supposed to beat, but last week they left a lot of questions, and they got out there and they let Riley Leonard play his brand of ball, and they showed up and showed out on the road in a fierce environment. Look, it doesn't matter how good or bad Purdue is, it is always rowdy when they're hosting a team. And so good job by the Irish to leave no questions about the quality of the team that they are. And look, it was impressive. It was a great game. There's still a lot to improve, a lot of points to be made, but this was a great bounce back week to keep yourself in the conversation.
It truly was. I mean, I thought Notre Dame would win this game. 42-0 at halftime. I'm not going to say I did see that coming, especially given the history of Purdue playing at home there, how well they perform at home. But yeah, I mean, this was just a brutal beatdown that never had a chance at being a game. So it's a good bounce back for Notre Dame. And listen, this is the kind of performance you need. You can't afford any more losses really to have a respectful chance at making the college football playoff. And they better be ready this week. I know it's Miami, Ohio, but they lost to a team from the MAC. This is the team from the MAC that many people, including me, picked to win this conference. So they cannot go sleeping into this game against the Miami, Ohio team who went toe to toe with Northwestern in a low scoring game, almost beat Cincinnati. They have a very solid defense. They cannot walk into this game not ready to play. Miami, Ohio could keep this really close.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to say about this game. Look, Notre Dame needs another 60-plus point victory here. I'm going to say it right now because look, you lost to a MAC team in Northern Illinois. Miami of Ohio and Toledo have been the two teams at the top of this MAC for the last 5 or so years. You need to go in and show everybody that look, we played a bad game. We got caught sleeping, but this is what we can do against the best in this conference. And this is what we're going to do for the rest of the season. So we need to go out and prove a point against the MAC to let people know that that was a fluke and it will not happen again.
Yeah,
Then we
definitely.
pan it to Alabama and Wisconsin. And look, I didn't expect this game to be particularly close, but I didn't expect Alabama to pour it on the way that they did.
I mean, it was close at the end of the first quarter. I think word for word, my answer, it was either on here on another show, was this would be close in the first quarter, and then I expected Bama to roll. And that's exactly what happened. Especially right before halftime. It was 14-3. It looked like Wisconsin was going to get a field goal and go into halftime, only down by 8 points, one score game. Don't get it. Bama goes right down the field real quickly and scores. And then from that point on, it was just brutal, brutal beatdown. Shout out to Bama. This was one of my bets of the week, which I will just brag on myself. If you would, I said if you choose wisely, if you wanted to do a parlay of all my picks for college football, you would have won some money with all my picks on college football this Saturday. So that's why I say choose wisely because it's an
Yep.
on again, off again week thing. But good for Bama to go in there and take care of business. Now they get a week off. They get to rest before they host Georgia in this monster showdown that I am amazed College Game Day has not already announced that they're going there officially. I would have hammered this in before week 0 even started, to be honest with you. So Georgia also is going to get a week off as well. So both teams should be rested going into a top 5 matchup in Tuscaloosa next Saturday.
Yeah, and let's pan it over to LSU, South Carolina. Look, this was College Game Day, and this was a great game. LSU comes out on top 36-33, if I'm correct. But look, I think my big disappointment here is that the injury, I think, really killed South Carolina. Had they had the ability to just throw the ball and extend one or two of those drives at the end of the game, they would have been able to salt away that clock. But because they had to keep only running the football, whether it was to Raheem Sanders or QB runs, it absolutely killed this team's ability to get the job done. Great effort by LSU to keep fighting and come back into this game. But look, they didn't look as good as they could have, and they should have gotten beat this week against South Carolina.
Oh yeah. And I'll go more to the point even more than you did. If Lenora Sellers is 100% healthy like he was in that first half and plays, South Carolina blows them out in the second half. I don't think this is a game in the second half. He goes out, tries to play in the third quarter, but he's so one-dimensional. There's no point in having him out there. Robbie Ashford comes in, who, no disrespect to Robbie, but you're a running quarterback. You're not a quarterback that LSU looked at and said, "Oh, we better drop back. They could throw the ball." No, they stacked the box. They shut down their run game for all really except for one or two drives for where Rocket Sanders just took off running for a long touchdown. But no, LSU should have lost this game. They absolutely should have. This game was pure chaos. I felt like this game was drunk, to be honest with you. Um,
I completely
but
agree there.
but the way what helped LSU, at least to me, they found a running game again. Caden Durham, the freshman running back, had a great ball game running the ball. He only had 98 yards, but he had it on 11 carries. He had a big game whenever they asked him to run the ball. He was crucial for them down that stretch and really getting them back into this game. You got to remember they were down 17-0 to start this game, and they were able to get the comeback. And listen, LSU, this game should have been a loss. Should be 1-2 going into it. But you look at it, you have this win, you host UCLA this weekend, who should be an easy win. You've seen this UCLA team and what they did against Indiana. Another shout out for that. Then you host South Alabama, and then you host Ole Miss in like 3 or 4 weeks. So you've gotten past the first SEC tough test. Now you get through these two, and you have a chance to maybe make some noise with Ole Miss coming to town.
Yeah. Look, this was not the game we expected at the end, but a great performance. Let's take it to Missouri. They barely survived a game against Boston College, and look, really, the Eagles or Golden Eagles, I think.
Yes, Golden Eagles. I believe it's Golden Eagles. As far as I know, I'm going to call them the Golden Eagles, whether they are or not at this point.
Yeah, now I'm second guessing myself. But look, I've been impressed with the way they played the season. Look, Missouri gets a big win in a top 25 matchup, and look, Boston College being ranked helped to boost their strength of schedule here in this game and getting themselves a top 25 win they didn't think they were going to have at this point in the season. But I think Boston College has been impressive. This is a team, honestly, I might look out for in this ACC. I think the ACC looks kind of weak this year, and they could absolutely rise above and take advantage with the way they're playing right now.
I mean, really, you take a look. As you're doing that, I'm taking a look at their schedule. They play Michigan State and Western Kentucky, and then their conference schedule at Virginia Tech. They host Louisville, host Syracuse, at SMU, and they host North Carolina and Pittsburgh. That's a very workable ACC schedule. I'm not saying they will do it. I'm saying that they have a workable schedule where you could possibly see them coming out. But listen, they played Missouri well. They had maybe that one fluke touchdown that kind of, I think, maybe caught Missouri's attention. The crazy pass that somehow turned into a really long touchdown. So similar to that Nebraska one from a year ago with Nebraska and Minnesota.
Yeah.
But listen, after that, Missouri's defense kind of shut them down for the rest of the game. So good for Missouri. But like you mentioned, Boston College, they have a path to maybe make some noise in the ACC. And listen, I'll just go ahead and say it. They're going to win this weekend. They are wearing the red bandana jerseys this weekend at home against Michigan State. They ain't losing in those. End of discussion here.
Yeah. Then let's cut it to some of our rivalry action that we saw this week. Oregon State face off, and Oregon looked the best they have all season. Look, no no secret to anybody how slow of a start this has been for Oregon, but finally getting it together against an Oregon State team that looked pretty good to start the season. So shout out to the Ducks for finally putting it together and showing what these pieces that they grabbed in the portal are capable of.
I I felt confident this would be their best performance. Rivalry games bring the best out of teams, and I felt very confident Oregon would be able to go in and handle business. And that's exactly what they did. They threw the ball well. Dylan Gabriel showed off his legs with a long touchdown run, but they just flat out dominated this game, really from the start. So I give them a ton of credit there. And listen, you got a little bit of time. You're at UCLA this weekend, or next weekend. Sorry, I should say next weekend to kind of get it. And then you got Michigan State, and then you got Ohio State later on down the line as well. So you still got some time in these two games before Ohio State's kind of get rolling, kind of like we expected Oregon to see at the start of the year. And I think they can continue that in these next two games.
Yeah, and then in the Apple Cup, we had Washington State come out on top against Washington, and honestly, this was the result.
Yeah.
This was the result that I expected. Sorry, my phone messed up there, so I don't know if I froze up or if I'm still good.
You froze up for like half a sec, but it's okay. Go ahead. Keep
Okay.
on rolling.
The outcome that I expected in this game, and I think this is what a lot of people expected. Washington, kind of a shell of themselves right now, trying to recover from what was last season. A lot of guys transfer out, a lot of guys go to the NFL, a lot of coaches taking some better jobs. So it's going to be a little bit of a recovery time for the Huskies. But Washington State absolutely capitalizing. And look, they're honestly looking to make a name for themselves in that pack too.
Yeah, they really are. John Mateer, shout out to him. I had him as one of the player of the weeks last week. There were so many good candidates for player of the week this week that I had to cut him from it. And I felt so bad for him not making that top four. I put him at number 5 solely because I couldn't live without him not being on there again. He's one of my favorite stories so far in college football, but also Washington State just getting this revenge win over a team that left to go to the Pac or to the Big Ten, and they had that huge goal line stand at the end of the game. And for Washington, I just want to know why you thought running a speed option with Will Rogers was the right call on the goal line against Washington State. I mean, I'm no expert, Austin, but I don't consider Will Rogers the option quarterback.
No, not exactly. Not a guy I'm looking at to be my option quarterback. And then finally, the last game we'll talk about from last week, the Georgia Bulldogs narrowly survive a game against the Kentucky Wildcats, 13-12, and Georgia just looked at a sink in this game.
I mean, yeah, there's no way to put it there. But I will say Georgia, in the last couple of years, I did some research after the game. Their first SEC games of the year, they always look kind of rusty. For example, last year, the South Carolina game, they hosted South Carolina. We all remember how that game was for the most part. South Carolina kept it really close with Georgia for most of the game. But to me, Kentucky should have won this game. Kentucky should have won this game, but Mark Stoops and them played way too conservative. I don't care if it is 4th and 8. You're at the Georgia 40-yard line, somewhere along there, maybe 10, 15 yards away from field goal range to take the lead, and you're going to punt it to Georgia with a little time left. And I know you got faith in your defense, but to me, if there is a moment to capitalize against the number 1 team in the country, you take it. Even then, they start at midfield. They punt it to you at least, but at least you have the respect of the fans that you went for it. I mean, this is just giving up against Georgia. I
Yeah.
mean, it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Kentucky should have won this game. They should have won it, but they did not. So good for Georgia to sneak by. Like we talked about, they have some work they got to do. The good news for them, like I said, they got a bye week similar to Alabama before they head to Alabama. And I can't wait for that game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, absolutely. I'm cutting in and out here sometimes, so I'm just trying to survive the best that I can. Um, Now let's take it over to the rankings. And we look at this top 25, and we'll start with our first 5 here. Only movement: Texas moves up to 1, Georgia moves down to 2, Ohio State stayed at 3, Alabama stayed at 4, and Ole Miss stayed at 5. And look, I think this is the right move. Georgia had an off week, Texas had a good week, and that's how it should be.
Red alert, Texas is number 1. All you in the South need to hide in your basements from anyone talking about Texas is back. You need to take cover right now because we're at Code Manning. We're at Code Manning currently. So you need to take cover. No, but actually it makes a lot of sense. I saw the argument for it after the Georgia game. I had no problem with it. So I was really impressed with Texas. I thought they deserved to be number 1. But obviously the factor being Quinn Ewers most likely out the next week or two. So how is Arch Manning going to do? And I'm not going to hype it up like some morons at ESPN are already saying, Austin, I saw the most stupid story I've ever seen on ESPN last night. It was a segment titled "Don't Poke the Bear" about ULM defensive coordinator saying that some of his guys played against Arch Manning in high school and beat him. And they're saying, "Don't poke the bear." I'm like, who is the bear? Is it Arch Manning? The guy who
Yeah.
played against UTSA? We're calling him a bear? I mean, no, he's Arch Manning. He has hardly played any at all. This is ridiculous. But Texas number 1, rightfully so. Georgia dropped back, but listen, they're going to get a chance very quickly to try to get back into that number 1 argument against a team in Alabama who is also looking to make an argument to move up as well.
Absolutely. Then at 6, we've got Tennessee. 7, we've got Missouri. 8, we've got Miami. 9, we've got Oregon. And 10, we've got Penn State, who dropped down 2 spots. Look, not a whole bunch of shit. It's really the same 5 teams in that 6 through 10 spot, but kind of shifted around. And Tennessee shooting up to 6, knocking on that top 5. Clearly, the committees like what they're seeing right now.
I mean, It's pretty clear cut right now. We're going to get some big matchups, obviously, this weekend. That will help with that. And obviously, later on down the line, that will help as well to kind of get this all solved. But yeah, I mean, this top 10 seems pretty clear right now. Um, just going to need some games to be played between some of the top teams, and then we can work on it from there, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Then we look at number 11, we've got USC. Number 12, Utah. Number 13, Kansas State. Number 14, Oklahoma State. And 15, Oklahoma. Again, same five teams, but Kansas State and Oklahoma State swap spots, which is kind of what it should have been even after last week.
I think word for word, this is exactly what we said it should have been last week. So good for them. Shout out the AP poll for being Bold Take podcast listeners. Agreeing with it here, but yeah, I mean, similar to this, same kind of stuff set that we talked about from last week. Listen, it's early in the year. There hadn't been a lot of big, gigantic matchups, so this is all going to work itself out. Eventually, we're going to see a lot more chaos. But right now, these main people are staying intact.
Yeah, absolutely. Then at number 17, Notre Dame moves up a spot. Michigan moves down a spot to 18. 19, Louisville staying put. Iowa State up another spot to 20. Clemson up a spot. Oh, well, I'm not going to jump a gun too much. We'll stay in the top. We'll stay at 15 or 16 through 20 now. But really with this, some teams shifting up with some teams flopping in and flopping out and falling up and down. But I kind of don't love Notre Dame only moving up a spot. Look, I'm not saying we should be propulsed back into the top 10, but I think they looked better than LSU did last week. I think they maybe even looked better than Oklahoma State did last week, but they're 3-0. I just think it was a big bounce back week for them, and for them to take such a hit last week, I thought maybe they could have recuperated some spots. But otherwise, I do like this top. I do like the where these teams are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Louisville staying right where they're at. Louisville's not played anyone until this weekend when they face Georgia Tech. That will be their first true test. Iowa State has a tough game against Arkansas State, who gave Michigan some worries last week. So I think there's some possibility, maybe some fun stuff happening there. But yeah, again, similar to what we talked about the top 15, it's all going to work itself out here in a couple of weeks. We're kind of just hanging around these same guys right now, but eventually we're going to see a lot more movement. But 21 through 25 is a fun group. I will say that.
Yes, Clemson at 21, Nebraska at 22, Northern Illinois at 23, Illinois at 24, and Texas A&M at 25. A&M gets back into the rankings. Um, Illinois gets into the rankings for the first time in who knows how long. And that's a sight for sore eyes.
Weren't y'all ranked? I think weren't y'all ranked 2022? I want to say y'all were ranked for a bit in 2022.
Maybe I honestly don't remember. I try not to remember too much about Illinois football.
Ouch. Hey, but this is a positive now. I mean, they're 3-0, ranked in the top 25, them and Northern Illinois. So just a great ranking for the whole state of Illinois, if you do say so.
Yeah.
But Nebraska, I mean, listen, Nebraska and Illinois, that's the fun game on Friday night, which, by the way, can I just say, even though it's makes kind of takes away from some games, I am loving that we're getting ranked head-to-head ranked matchups on Friday nights on back-to-back weekends. Just a great way to lead into the weekend of college football, and two teams that are kind of like, yeah, they've won a game or two that's big. Now they're playing each other, and they're both 3-0. So one of these teams is going to be 4-0 legitimately after some seasons last year where they got to 4 wins not till the end of the year if they got there at all. So that's going to be fun. I felt like A&M deserved a chance to get back in the rankings. I think they're solid. They just kind of need to get this offense figured out. And if you want my honest opinion, Marcel Reed, their backup, he should be the starter. Connor
Yep.
Weigman, I wasn't the biggest fan of, really thought he was a bit overrated. Marcel Reed kind of, I think, is the better choice for A&M. But when they play Arkansas, I hope they start Connor Weigman.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't agree more there. Marcel Reed just looks more comfortable on the offense. He gives them more options. It just seems like Carter Wegman isn't there. I really think A&M would be making a mistake to start anybody else this coming weekend. But let's cut it to those players and teams of the week. And look, let's get it started. Let's get it going. Who do you got as your team of the week?
So my top five teams, I'll go from 5 to 1. Number five, I got to get UNLV on here. Going on the road, their second win against a Power Five opponent. I keep on saying Power Five, Power Four. Austin, come on, get it
It's
right.
tough. It's tough to remember.
Number four, I went with Pittsburgh. Got the big win in the backyard brawl. Can I just say that game? They don't need to take away that series from us again. Keep it around. It's always a good game. This game did not disappoint. Number three, I had UCF, a great comeback win against TCU where I believe they were down 28-7 in this game, and they were able to come back and win it in regulation. So I thought that was a really good win for Gus Malzahn, KJ Jefferson, and all them. Yes, I was correct. 28-7. That's what it was. But yeah, so I thought it was a great win for them. My number two team had to give Washington State, had to give the Cougars some love for their win over an opponent that left and thought their conference was better. They thought they were better than Washington State, and Washington State went and got the win. And then number one, I mean, I don't know how anything else, and I'm special to this one because on another show we do super dogs, but we pick outright winner super dogs. And I correctly picked Toledo to go into Starkville and beat Mississippi State. I didn't think they'd blow them out and embarrass them like they did. But I got to
Yeah,
give the Toledo Rockets some love for going in and just embarrassing Mississippi State and making me forget about the Razorbacks. So it was really good.
that's good to hear. My teams of the week, starting at number five, we've got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Look, I think a win against Purdue was expected, so I didn't want to give them one of these top four spots. But I did want to give them a five spot to kind of show that, man, this was an impressive way to kind of make some noise and show who you are and bounce back from a loss. Number four, I put Texas A&M. I just like the way this team played under Marcel Reed with him at the starting quarterback position. I was impressed at how much better this team looked, almost night and day, really, with the change at quarterback. At number three, I went with Memphis. And look, I know Florida State's not the team everybody expected them to be coming into the season. That's clear now that they're 3-0 or 0-3. But Memphis, undefeated right now. They were one of the teams to look out for that group of five playoff bid. And look, they're doing everything they can. They've scheduled the big games on the road to prove themselves. And look, adding a Power Four win, no matter how good or bad the team is, especially when it's on the road, is certainly going to help that case for the Memphis Tigers. And number two, I went with UNLV. I loved the way this team went out and got the job done against Kansas. And they look like another one of those top teams in the group of five. But at number one, I went with Kansas State. This was a week to prove yourself. This was a week to make a name for yourself. And they absolutely went out and did it. Hats off to the Kansas State Wildcats. As we correctly predicted, the Wildcats would win that one.
Yep, they did. Wildcats got the win. Shout out Wildcats.
Um, So now we head over to Instagram, the only polls we did this week. And on Instagram we had uh Pitt and UNLV pulling out huge wins in the polls. But that leaves only one winner for us, and that's the UNLV Rebels getting the job done, becoming our team of the week. Man, it has been a fun year for teams and player of the week so far this season.
Yeah, can we keep this up, please? I'm loving the teams. Not that I didn't love the ones from last year, but the ones this year so far have just been so unique. We talked about how the start of last year we kept on getting team and players matched up, and it's just been so more unique this year, and I think that's made it a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. But now I'll kick it off with my players of the week. And I'll start at number five with Khalil Mullings, running back out of Michigan. Look, Michigan did have some troubles against Arkansas State this week, but for this guy, Khalil Mullings, to come out and rush for over 120 yards and a big time victory to show out, it makes you wonder what's going on with Donovan Edwards right now. But an impressive performance and an impressive showing from a guy who's the number two back on his team. At number four, I had Avery Johnson. Like you said, this guy diced it up on the ground, and he looked really impressive throwing the ball. If he can continue this, he might have a Heisman on his trophy case when this season's over. Then at number three, I have Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. This guy had a phenomenal game catching the ball over 100 yards, a receiving touchdown. He was a true threat for Arizona State. And I can speak to that going into college football 25. He's also a threat to catch the ball and take it to the house. At number two, I had Eli Holstein, quarterback out of Pitt. Man, oh man, was I impressed with his performance in that backyard brawl. Man, this is an impressive Pitt team. I'm excited to see what he and this team can do throwing the football. And then number one, I went with Curtis Rourke at Indiana, over 400 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. This is the kind of performances that Indiana was hoping to have when they hired Kirk Cignetti, when they brought him in to reboot this team. He's absolutely done a great job in these first 3 weeks. I am just completely impressed with Indiana and their performance so far.
Hey, what can we say? I'm glad you're getting them Hoosiers some love. That's what I like to see. So
Yes,
my top five, number five, I had John Mateer already kind of mentioned it. Back to back, he's on my list. Listen, I'm a Washington State fan at heart. Shout out Mike Leach. We all know why we love some Cougars. He was great in the game throwing the ball, but his athletic ability and making the big plays with his feet, I think, is what has made him so much fun to watch these past couple of weeks. Number four, I went with RJ Harvey, was one of the key pieces along with KJ Jefferson in their comeback win against TCU, 180 yards on the ground. He was really good on the ground for this UCF team. So absolutely had to give him some love as he had 2 touchdowns in this game. Number three, I went with Mason Thomas, Oklahoma. I got an edge rusher in here. We got some edge rushers in here.
yes,
And I was trying to look. I did my research on him and I was like, and I saw some people talking about what a game he had. I looked it up and I was impressed with it. For real. Had 3 sacks in the game, a forced fumble in the game as well. I mean, he was wreaking havoc for Oklahoma against this Tulane team and had to give him some love for defensive players on this list. Number two, Curtis Rourke, like you said, Indiana. I hyped them up. They were my main bet of the week from this past week, so knew I had to show them some love. And he was phenomenal in this game against UCLA. And he was throwing the ball great. And like I said, Indiana is looking really good under Kurt Cignetti. I mean, look, Austin, he told us he wins. Google me. He has not had a losing record in his time as a head coach, 6-6 or better records every year. So, I mean, he told us. And then number one, I had to give some love to a guy that we have known for a while on the show, Jalen Milrow.
yep,
Flat out going on the road to Wisconsin, a really tough environment, running the football well, throwing the football well. And can I say, him throwing the football, he has been so efficient this year. Not a lot of pass attempts, but he's making the most out of the pass attempts. So I absolutely loved it. Had to show him some love on this player of the week list.
absolutely. And when we look at the polls, we have Curtis Rourke and Avery Johnson bringing home extra votes. And that leaves us with a clear cut favorite from everybody. And Curtis Rourke out of Indiana winning our player of the week. Boy, oh boy, it has been fun. And I keep saying it fun with these teams and players of the week, what we've been able to accomplish thus far.
Yeah. If this is what we have to start the season, I really don't know what to expect as we go on further down the line this year. We might get even weirder ones as we go down the line. But no, I'm happy for him. Happy Indiana getting some love on here, along with some of our other teams that we talked about. UNLV, Montana State got some love, Georgia Tech. I could go on and on about all the teams that got some love. So yeah, you love to see it.
All right, let's look and preview some of these games that we've got coming up this weekend. Let's start with Clemson versus NC State. Look, NC State was a team that's ranked in the top 25 coming into this season, a team that people thought could compete in this ACC. They're 2-1. They're going to be going on the road into Death Valley, playing a 1-1 Clemson team that sits at number 21 in the nation. This is a great chance for North Carolina State to kind of redeem themselves from that Tennessee loss, maybe prove what they can do with Grayson McCall, and for Clemson kind of the same thing. Both of these teams really need to make a name for themselves in the ACC and in the country and kind of show what they're capable of. I'm expecting this one to be a fun and exciting matchup in that 11 o'clock slate.
Yeah, I mean, this is the EA Sports College Football game of the week on there. So, of course, the big thing, Grayson McCall, I've heard officially has been benched for CJ Bailey in this game.
Wow.
So he came in relief for McCall during the Louisiana Tech game last week. So all signs I've heard points to him getting the start. We might see some Grayson McCall action in this game, but I'm interested to see how this backup does his first start on the road at Clemson against a very solid Clemson defense. I think that will be a fun factor. And this Clemson offense, we saw some fun stuff out of them against App State. What are they going to do now? They're playing another Power Four opponent. How will this offense look? And can Garrett Riley, for all he was hyped up to be, get this Clemson offense finally looking competent?
Yeah, I like how you had to think about Power Four there for a second.
I know.
Um,
Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
there you go. Then we've got Kansas versus West Virginia. This one's going to be in Charleston. And look, the Jayhawks, as we talked about, they've had a slow start. This is going to be a matchup in conference play. So can Kansas get on the right foot in conference play and start to put themselves back on the path to success?
Yeah, these are two teams that I think, are really happy conference play is here because they have had a rough
Yeah,
out of conference schedules to start the year. Both 1-2, both some heartbreaking losses. Yeah, this is a game both teams absolutely need. Obviously, like you said, being in Morgantown, West Virginia, I think will have a fun factor on this game. But the big key for me in this game, Jalen Daniels. If he doesn't turn the ball over, we know what this Kansas offense can do. We saw what Eli Holstein was able to do against this West Virginia defense. Can we see that same thing from Jalen Daniels? Finally, success in the passing game. If he has success in the passing game, I expect Kansas to get the win on the road at West Virginia. But this West Virginia offense is bad as, even though they're 1-2, they have been a really solid offense as well.
yeah. Then we've got UCLA versus LSU, and look, UCLA looked rough last week, but now facing off against an LSU team, the Tigers need this win to get a big Power Four win, and keep themselves kind of in that playoff contention. Last week, like we said, this team probably should have lost. They need to go out here and leave no questions about this game against UCLA.
They have no reason not to win this game. They have no reason at all not to win this game and win it convincingly. You got a team all the way from California making the trip to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to come play you after a horrendous performance against Indiana. You need all the momentum you can get if you're LSU. This is a game that you should win. And to be honest with you, it really shouldn't be a contest. I really expect LSU to go out and handle business against UCLA in this game. I mean, that's all I have to say. I don't expect this to be a close game at all.
Absolutely. Then we've got Georgia Tech on the road heading off to face against Louisville. And look, this is the team that's already 1-1 in conference play in Georgia Tech, and they're looking to get back on the right foot, back in the top 25 with a big win over the Louisville Cardinals.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is also big for Louisville. They have played two games against Austin P and Jacksonville State. They have not played a legit team so far. And Georgia Tech, being a 10.5 point underdog, they've been in this double digit underdog and going out and getting a straight up win whenever it's happened, when they did against Florida State. So this will be fun test for Louisville, their first home game of their first true test on the season. I'm expecting a physical grudge match kind of game like we always do with Georgia Tech since Brent Keys come over. But this is going to be a physical one, and this is one that I think easily is going to come down to the wire.
Absolutely. Then we've got the Razorbacks versus the Auburn Tigers, and sitting at 2-1. Conference play opens for these teams. What are you expecting from the Razorbacks this week?
Well, there's a lot of question. Number one, there's a lot of injuries in the secondary. There's gonna be a lot of guys out in this game. The good news is usually Auburn doesn't in the last couple of years with Peyton Thorne hasn't really thrown the football down the field. The problem, he's not starting anymore. Hank Brown, this freshman quarterback, I didn't really get to watch them against New Mexico, but he was able to have success throwing the ball against New Mexico. So to me, the overall difference, if Auburn can have any success, they're going to need to have success throwing the football. Arkansas, I expect to stack that box and try to make them one-dimensional. If they have success throwing the football, as if it's already tough to go win at Auburn, that will make it even tougher for Arkansas. The offense is getting yards every single game. That's not a question to me. We know the offense is getting yards. The question for me, though, with Taylon Green, Can he make these throws against SEC level opponents? We're going to find out this weekend. So it should be a really, really solid game, I think, between two teams that are kind of looking to find themselves in this new SEC. Yeah, it's one similar to others. I expect to go down to the wire, and hopefully Arkansas doesn't get screwed by the refs the last time they were down in Auburn.
Yeah. Then we've got Cal, Florida State in Tallahassee, and one of the most obscene matchups of conference play in this new conference realignment. I mean, just a good old fashioned ACC showdown with one team coming all the way from the Pacific Coast.
Yeah.
Um, but Florida State looking to get right. Look, they're not just looking to get a winning conference; they're looking to get a win this season. And Cal sits at 3-0. They've had an impressive start to the season. I honestly just don't know if the Seminoles are going to get it done, even though this game's at home. Even though Cal has to travel the entire country, I just think Cal looks that much better so far this season.
I mean, but listen, the main thing to me in this game, number one, just Austin, I don't know how much you've been on this portion of Twitter because I know, like you said, you've had a
I I have
chaotic
been.
week. Cal Twitter is the second best thing I've ever found on Twitter. It was the funny. It has made my entire week just like, what did Cal Twitter post today? What did Cal Twitter post? So I'm rooting for Cal solely so I can see the growth of Cal Twitter even more with a 4-0 start. It's going to be really, really a fun game, I think, for Cal. Florida State, I mean, it's like you said, they just want to win. Like they don't care how they get it. They just need a win. And this is probably as close as you're going to get to maybe a best case scenario in conference. You guys even coming all the way across the country to play you in this game. This one, I'll be honest with you, I'm expecting a low scoring and really, really ugly football game. Just flat out honest with you is what I expect from it.
Yeah, somehow I got into Cal Twitter early. I've been in Cal Twitter since like week one. And
Hey,
so I guess they targeted me early. But I absolutely love it. But let's get into some of these game picks. We've got a lot of good looking top 25 matchups that we need to talk about. And that starts with Illinois, Nebraska, a game that we've hinted at a couple times. Two teams looking to prove they're legitimate in this Big Ten and rise up in these rankings even further. I'll go ahead and say that I pick Illinois. I'm going to stand with those boys from Champaign. Even though I probably wouldn't pick them outside of being an Illinois fan because I do like the way Nebraska and Raiola look. But I'm going to ride with the Illini until the wheels fall off.
I respect it. You got my respect there. Listen, this is a game. The over under is 42. Honestly, I say you hammer the under there. This will be a low scoring. This is going to be a physical football game with two really good defenses and two teams that I wouldn't say have the most elite passing games in the world. But the difference to me though is it's at Lincoln, Nebraska. This is their first game that they're going to be the first big game they've had as a ranked team in a while. I expect that crowd to be a huge factor. I'm going to take Nebraska to win it. If it was at Illinois, I'd probably pick Illinois. I think these Friday night games, the crowd plays such a big factor in it because if they can pack that stadium on a Friday night, that shows you how tough of a fan base it can be to go play against.
And honestly, I think it gives you a better chance to pack the stadium. You talk about Friday night, kids are getting out of class. They might still be on campus that night, as opposed to maybe you go out somewhere on the weekend. Friday, get out of class, head down to the football field, and watch some unreal action unfold.
I did
Uh,
hear that Nebraska is doing a thing. I saw it actually like an hour ago on Twitter. They are having completely online classes on Friday. Like they are not
you love
making students come
that.
in for classes at all with the Nebraska game. So I love that. I love that energy from Nebraska, realizing we got a good football team. Let's capitalize on it for all the students.
Yeah, I should have gone to a big college. I think that every time I hear a story to a big Power Four college, I'd be, almost millions of dollars in debt. But I would have had some fun doing it. Um, but then we've got USC versus Michigan in the Big House. Look, it's a Big Ten matchup. No matter how much it looks like a Big Ten matchup, and Michigan needs both of these teams really need this win to show what kind of competitor they are. We've seen USC what they can do against LSU. They need to continue that on the road now in a hostile environment. And for Michigan, chance to get back on track. Who you got in this game?
Man, honestly, USC's first game in the Big Ten, of course. Alex Orji set to start at quarterback for Michigan. So how will that factor play out in the game? But listen, this will be a low scoring affair, at least in my mind. This USC defense is tremendously improved. We know how talented this Michigan defense is. The difference to me, though, is I'm a big fan. I'm loving me some Miller Moss. Miller Moss has been a great quarterback. What I've seen this year, that's the difference to me in this game is quarterback play and passing the football. I'm going to take USC to win this game.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I'm taking USC. I think that they're the much better team. Like you said, quarterback play is so much better for USC. Absolutely going to go with the Trojans in this one. And let's keep taking a look at some of these new conference realignment matchups. We've got two more for you. Number 12, Utah versus number 14, Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Oklahoma State, boy, oh boy, not the exactly riveting start that we expected this team to have with one of the top running backs in the country. But now they face off against Utah. Fierce defense, talented team. Who you got in this one?
Well, similar to the other ones, I think this is going to be a physical, low-scoring game. Two really good defenses. I think will get to go head-to-head here. And of course, Ollie Gordon is the question. Cam Rising, which Austin, I think we have to address it that we got duped. That we got duped
Well,
on
you know
Twitter.
what? I'm not going to let you fall on the sword here. This was me. This was my duping, and I will not let you take the blame for it. I'm the one who said it. You had no idea that it even existed. I was the one who was duped. I will not let you fall on the sword for me. But
I
yes,
was
I was.
trying. Let me be the hero. I'm trying to be
Uh,
with you on this, Austin.
I'm saving you from this one. You were not duped. You had no idea. You'd never even heard it until I said it.
That is true. But Cam Rising is expected to play in this game.
Fast
Obviously,
recovery from tetanus.
yeah, yeah, really impressive recovery time, if you ask me. Um, to me, though, again, similar to this, in a game like this with two teams solid defenses, solid run games, but Ollie Gordon and I looked up a stats I've seen. Ollie Gordon's production in the first three games last year was very similar to what he had this year, what he did last year. He started slow both last year and this year. So I'm expecting him to pick it up at some point here, but I don't see it against this Utah defense. I think with Cam Rising back, this Utah team is tough for anybody to beat. With Cam Rising there, I'm not going to bet against Utah. I'm going to take the Utes to go into Stillwater and get the win.
I'm right there with you again. Like you said, this is two talented teams, but again, quarterback play is going to be key in a lot of these matchups where defenses are good, run games are good. It's going to come down to whose quarterback can step up at the end of a close game and make the plays. And really, Alan Bowman just has not executed that well, in my opinion. And Cam Rising coming back is going to be a huge boost for the Utes. And then finally,
This fun fact, this matchup features two quarterbacks who are older in this matchup combined than Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson playing in the NFL on Sunday. So I just found that really funny in case you
yeah,
want to know
that
that.
that is crazy. Um, let's take a look now at the um, the final matchup here in Norman. Oklahoma gets its first bit of SEC action against number 6 Tennessee. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be an explosive, star-powered matchup against two young quarterbacks. Who do you see winning this one?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to make a promise. I said word for word on here. I will not say his name until they're top 10, and I completely forgot about it last week. So I am going to attempt it for the first time on here. Be prepared to laugh your butt off at my attempt here to pronounce the name of the soon to be legend. And you won't probably hear me say this again for a while, but I said it on here, so I have to. Nico, I am Liava.
I think that's actually probably pretty close. That was a lot better than I expected. With some of the names you said on here, that was better than I expected. You're getting better.
I just went straight off with the I am, and then I just went with Liava after that because I saw I am. I'm like, I'm gonna say I am. If it's wrong, it's wrong. That's how I'm gonna go with. But you mentioned him and Jackson Arnold, two young quarterbacks, their first true big moments for both of them in this game. And similar to what we talked about in these other big games, two really good defenses. We've seen this OU defense get better every single year. Same with Josh Heupel and this Tennessee defense. This is probably the most balanced team they have had so far with Josh Heupel being there. Listen, this will be a game that I think will be low scoring. And again, it comes down to me to I don't know if I'm going to say quarterback. Obviously, it could be quarterback of who the one I trust more. But I think there's just a little bit something here more for Josh Heupel. I think there's a little something more here. Gotta remember, played at Oklahoma, got second in the Heisman Trophy, was the offensive coordinator at OU for several years, and then he got fired, which led him on the path to being the UCF coach, and then going to Tennessee now. I think he sees that this is his big moment to go in and prove them wrong. I'm going to take Tennessee to win this game, but I'm expecting a grudge match. To me, this will be the best game of the season up to this point.
I completely agree with you on that point, but I'm actually going to take the Oklahoma Sooners in this game. Look, this game's in Norman. We've got two young quarterbacks. Look, they both look good to start the season, but mistakes are bound to happen. I think one thing that helps a young quarterback not make mistakes is playing at home in front of the home fans. I think one thing that makes a young quarterback make mistakes is playing on the road against a rowdy, ruckus fans. And so I think the fans in Norman come out, they show out, they disrupt the Volunteers, and the Sooners come out and get the job done in Norman.
Right. And hey, think of what that could set up potentially for Oklahoma. They're at Auburn next week, and then they get a bye week, and then they play Texas. That's potentially a top 10 matchup if things go the Sooners' way in this game. And then for Tennessee, obviously, we know the ramifications later on down the line. I mean, you host Bama, you're at Georgia. Enough said for both sides. This is big to get some momentum going into those tough games.
Yeah, absolutely. And a chance to cut yourself some slack if you lose some of these bigger games down the line because of the spot that you're ranked in and wins like this in the top 25. Now, let's cut it to that bet of the week. And look, I'm sorry for the first week this week. I failed you guys. I think I either went 2-1 or I think I really did go 1-2, which I'm just not proud of. I got full of myself, brought a lot of ego. I like to pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. So I am
As there's a
gonna
fly ball deep to left by Nick Castellanos, that'll be a home run.
um but I'm gonna go back to the one pick this week. But I'm gonna stick to Old Reliable even though Ball State failed us all. I'm going Marshall plus 39.5 against Ohio State this weekend. You just can't. You just can't go against it. Everybody knows I love a big spread, but I've got to go with it. There's something wrong with me. I know there's a reason the spreads are so big, but I say Vegas, I don't care.
Okay. So you're going with an old reliable one. I'm going to go with one that I'm hoping could become old reliable because it'd be kind of fun. They were big for me last week. I'm going to take them now. Give me Indiana minus 28.5 against Charlotte. I think Indiana will go out and they're going to blow out Charlotte. I think this won't even be a contest. You will have your money in hand before halftime. You'll be that confident at halftime that this bet's going to hit. So yeah, this one to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm gonna ride the Kurt Signetti train until it crashes, just like I do with the Penn State hype train. I ride it until it goes off the cliff and it just becomes a disaster. I'm gonna ride Kurt Signetti in Indiana minus 28. So there you go. You got one going against the big spread. You got one going with the big spread. Go ahead and do both sides of that one.
Yeah, see how that one pans out. But with all that being said, we've got a fun, action-packed week of college football coming up. And so, boy, it's going to be fun times. But make sure you watch that NFL episode that comes out after this. That's Austin Waiter. I'm Austin Hill. We want to thank you for listening.